What is NLP and why should I care?
So essentially everything we do is a process. NLP is basically understanding your thoughts, language and behaviours, and then understanding the mental models that we have.
In any buying situation, the premise of asking past-based questions allows us to understand an initiative that they've tried, what worked well, and if they could have gone back again and done it differently, what would they have done?
So when you ask change-based questions, what happens is we straight away go back to the past. So when you pick up on that, that's your opportunity then to chunk right down into the detail and ask really specific questions.
In this episode, you're going to learn how to use NLP to self-coach yourself when deals don't go your way. And in this episode, Luigi is going to be a little bit vulnerable as Hannah coaches Luigi through one of his many lost deals. Let's dive right into it.
So I noticed as well when you were talking about that particular example, I can literally track your eyes and where your eyes are looking. So when you're, the feelings of regret, when you're talking about regret, the way that you were looking downwards and, you can sort of follow this whole, because you're picturing, you're visualizing, and you're literally with your body language, your eyes and your body language, you're talking us through this whole story, an event that you've got running, and this whole process that you've got running in your mind. And so then we can see that. But the only way that I will, pick up on that is if I'm able to be here and be fully present, that I can watch. And I understand obviously the different techniques and what they mean, but I can sit here and I can observe that and say, well, Luigi, I noticed when you were talking about having deep regret, your body language shifted a little bit, or you did, you looked down and, it seemed like you had a lot of emotion associated with that. What was happening for you? I wouldn't necessarily do that in a sales conversation, but, they're things that you can pick up on and then work with the other person. So same thing with a prospect. I might say, well, when I mentioned this particular part about the product or the service, I noticed that you, looked a little bit uncomfortable there. What was going on for you? Is there, what is that a concern? Is there, or do you have a question? And so you can then explore that further with
I love that. It was like we had a conversation recently with someone in our community, and they were talking about how they were looking at investing into a certain marketing initiative. And you mentioned this on the call, that unless that provider hasn't asked you these specific questions, they really don't have the right to put a proposal in front of you.
Yeah.
And the person's eyes lit up. They just threw the shoulders back and they were like, look, they were thinking it and now you validated it for them. Really, really interesting.
Yeah, and I really love this, and it's quite insightful. And we're just going to go back a step, and I'm doing it now, right? I'm looking up so thanks. But we often talk about past-based questions because past-based questions allow us to get a better understanding of where have they come from and what could impact the way they make decisions today. And I love, again, I'm doing it again. I'm looking up now and I'm looking down. So you've made me a bit, a bit uncomfortable now. But again, walk us through the importance of seeking understanding of the past and then really being intent and being intentional with seeing how they change their body and why that's important in this whole NLP experience.
So just to clarify, can you tell me a little bit more about the past piece?
You're a very, very good consultant, by the way. We need to get a kid for us. So as in, why do we ask past-based questions? Yeah. Because we know that, especially in more of in any buying situation, is we're conditioned by our past experiences. So if we've made certain purchases that might not have worked, and we don't find that out, then they might not have confidence in oneself because they've bought something and haven't done it correctly, or they've bought something from a provider, it hasn't done what it said. So therefore, it's the hidden barrier that we haven't picked up on. So the premise of asking past-based questions allows us to understand an initiative that they've tried, what worked well, and if they could have gone back again and done it differently, what would they have done? Because that could then indicate there's some biases that we potentially need to work through prior to asking for commitment.
Yeah, totally makes sense. And we apply very similar strategies with coaching as well. So there's an opportunity in that around understanding what other people have done that hasn't worked, that has, so other providers as well, and the impact that this has had for this particular person around their beliefs. So again, you're trying to tap into what their beliefs are, what their motivations are, and the processes that they're running to help think about the questions that you need to ask. What was your question again now? It was around,
it was around the importance of understanding, asking that past-based question to see how they react and where NLP can be leveraged to then manage that level of anxiety, essentially.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
So why that's so powerful is when you ask past-based questions, so change is hard. We know that change is hard. It's hard for everybody. And to get somebody to change what they're doing, if things are going relatively well, we won't change. The most significant change, transformative life change and business change that happens is when something really significant happened that hasn't been good.
Yeah.
And that's where we learn and grow the most. So when you ask change-based questions, what happens is we straight away go back to the past. Most people can visualize it. Apparently not everybody can visualize, but you can still tap into the mental models through your language. Most people will go back and they'll be able to see visually that experience, which will create the same emotion. And coming back to what we were talking about before, when we have the emotion, our body language matches it. So if you say to me, well, what was it about that didn't work for you or that you weren't sure about, or you'll see those body language shifts as I try and recall the images or experience that I had and the associated emotions with it. So when you pick up on that, that's your opportunity then to chunk right down into the detail and ask really specific questions. So in NLP, there's a bit of we call it a hierarchy of ideas. So your global context, and then you've got, sort of the information in between, and you can chunk laterally, or then chunk down, chunk back up to ask those specific questions. So if you want to know more information, you can drill down. So that will help you get the answers that you need. So what was it about that? I feel like there's, is that all there was, or is there something else? Okay. And so you start to work out, maybe they're getting too caught up on a little bit of detail. So then you go back up again, and then you can go, I was with another company. Tell me about, so you're sort of on the same level. Tell me about that company.
Yeah.
What was it about that company? And what other companies have you tried? Okay. And then what's your ideal scenario? And what's, if you fast forward and put yourself into that future, and, you imagine yourself and your business is successful, and it's, you're aligning back to what they've told you is important and what they want. I want my business to be thriving and successful. I want more time with my family. I want freedom. I want to be happy. And you'll see their body language change. When you ask them to visualize the future and their ideal outcomes, they can picture it, and then their body language will change positively. So you can then, tap into that. Well, what is it about that, and how would it feel?
Yeah.
What would you be thinking? What would you be telling yourself? What would be happening for your family? So you can help create that, and then say, now what would we need to do to make that happen? And then work through any potential objections or challenges that they've got.
So this is really insightful. So two parts to this, right? So obviously in order, I'm looking up again. Obviously, let me look at you. Obviously, in order to ask, now I'm looking down.
Straight.
You don't have to cut this out, by the way.
That's why I talk with my hands.
Yeah.
So
Obviously, in order to ask those type of drill down questions and be that level of consultant, right, you've got to earn the right. It can't be straight off the bat. There's got to be that level of trust. And second, when you do pick up that there is that level of emotion and you've spoken about something of the past, it's created a little bit of anxiety for them. How do you manage that? Because that anxiety could essentially stop them from moving forward. So you've picked something up, which is really important. Yeah. Now it's up. You've surfaced it. What do you then do to help manage that anxiety?
It's such a good question. So there's skill. So obviously this is why the learning how to do this is important. And this is where a lot of people fail because they don't have the skill. So maybe they watch some videos and whatever else and then they go and try it.
Yeah.
So this is actually one of the greatest opportunities is when people, they're not unresourceful as people, they're in an unresourceful state. And an unresourceful state can be a really great opportunity. Like they're experiencing anxiety or fear or, they're angry or whatever it might be. We can tap into that and explore it. And so what is it about that? But again, you've got to have the skill and the confidence to ask those questions.
Yeah.
What is it about that? And, I can see it looks like you're feeling really uncomfortable about this. And so you can explore and ask some deeper questions around it. And also, that's what we don't want. So coming back to the motivation, that's what we don't want. So the context of what they're talking, like you want to try and see the opportunity in that. Yeah. So if they're saying this, because again, you want to help them, right? Your intention, the authenticity piece, you genuinely want to help them. I can see that this probably wasn't a good experience for you. What was it about that? How do we make sure that doesn't happen again? What's the opportunity in this? Like how could, what does the ideal scenario look like? How do we create that? And so you're helping them move from being over here to over here. And so they can then associate, I really don't want to feel like that. I want to avoid feeling like this. I want to avoid being in this situation ever again. Okay, well, what do you want? Well, I want A, B, and C. So they're helping you so that you can help them. Yeah. But again, it all comes back to making sure you've got the right intention and you're not trying to sell a product. You can identify that they have a need, and your role is to help them see how this is going to actually help them.